Hey everybody, how's it going? Today I wanted to do my first comparison video with two knives that I own that are strikingly similar to each other. I'll get into all the ways that they are and the ways they're different. I have no set script for this video, so this is kind of just me talking about what aspects of these knives that I like and what I don't like and how they compare to each other. So to start out with, let's identify what we've got, what we're working with here. These are both Shirogorov knives. They're production knives. This top guy here is the F95, and I'm not sure if it's called the F95 NL or if the NL is only the micarta inlay version. But the reason I'm not sure is because this is an inlay version, and the only inlay versions they make of the F95 are carbon fiber and micarta, and they don't make the carbon fiber one anymore. So F95 carbon fiber inlay. This is the Hati. It is an older model. Both of these, I guess, are not made anymore because this has a full carbon fiber show scale, which they have transitioned to Alutex now, which is kind of a similar material but made from aluminum. And the other thing about this guy is the blade steel is F97, which Shirogorov recently just discontinued using in all of their knives. From what I understand, Vanax has a really high corrosion resistance as opposed to what did I think this guy's M390? Yeah, as opposed to M390. M390 also has good corrosion resistance, but Vanax is apparently higher. So there are two really kind of differences between these two knives that stand out and I think are worth mentioning right off the bat. And one of them is weight, and the second is price. So for this guy right here, this is the Hati. The Hatis start at $8.95, which is a lot of money for a knife like this, but they're really worth it. The F95s, the all titanium versions, they start at $10.95 or $1,100 if you want to be, we can talk $900 and $1,100. So that's a $200 price difference. And I would say it's justified. I don't have a new F95. I can't tell you if they have lightning pockets or whatnot, but the new F95s, the new F95s, they have multi-row bearing system, whereas this only has single row bearings, and they very well may have lightning pockets, so that if I ever get my hands on a newer F95, I'll be sure to do a comparison video between the old and new and to really hash out what the updates are and whatnot. So price-wise, we're just going to round and make things easy. We're going to say $900, $1,100. Full titanium. Titanium is more expensive than, usually more expensive than carbon fiber. Boom, we're comparing these two, but it also has a carbon fiber inlay. So that's going to add a little bit to the price. In terms of the blade steel and how that's priced, I'm not sure if Vanax is kind of across the board cheaper than M95 or M390. So I'm not sure if that plays into it at all. So price-wise, you got about a $200 difference, which, when you're up in the $8,000, $9,000, $1,100 range is less important, I guess. You're already spending that much money. You'd probably be more inclined to show out the extra $200 for something, up a higher tier or whatnot. So with price out of the way, we will talk weight. And if I turn my scale on here, F95 full titanium, no milling pockets, no lightning pockets whatsoever. A little bit beefier. If we switch over to ounces, we will see that this guy is 5 ounces even. Now, if we pull out the Hati, which has a full carbon fiber show scale and pretty intensive interior milling, you can see right there. I think it's going to be a pretty noticeable difference. Yeah, well, about an ounce. When you're holding the two knives, you can really feel it, but if it's only 0.7 ounces, that's really not as much as I thought. But anyway, so you got the price difference, you have the weight difference. So if weight's a really big deal for you, a 5-ounce knife is probably going to be something you're not really into, and that's why a lot of people really like the Neon, which is Shirogorov's smaller knife, which has full titanium handles and internal milling. So if we were to look at the aesthetics of these guys, handle-wise, you can see that obviously we're working with titanium versus carbon fiber. The carbon fiber is milled differently in the inlay versus the handle. You can see that we kind of have the horizontal. If we line it up like this, the lines kind of move horizontally. The actual like texturing of the milling is horizontally, and the fiber are wove, you know, in their usual pattern. Over on this guy, the milling is kind of semicircular, stacked on top of each other, which makes for a good grip when you're holding the knife. Versus this it's less of a good grip, and I would say more for aesthetics or just kind of, you know, any cool milling design. The lock sides of these knives are identical construction-wise. You can see they're the exact same. The only thing that's different is the pocket clips. The free spinning pivots are made the same way. You got the detent, the steel lock bar inserts, the lock bar cutouts. There is a cutout in the inlay just because it's kind of above the handle level, so in order for the pocket clip to be even across the lock bar cutout and the rest of the lock bar side, you need to kind of the milling down to even out the carbon fiber. Pocket clips are the exact same shape, and they have this shared line right here, but the F95 has one extra, you know, milling line. I don't know, it's just an aesthetic kind of thing. But if we want to look at the blades, like I said, this is Van Axe 37, this is M390. You can see that there are two kind of more noticeable differences, and I guess if I line it up like this, you might be able to see it a little bit better. So if we're looking right at the base of the edge, right here on the blade, you might be able to see it, I'm not sure. But if you look at the F95, you can see that it's more of a shorter peak. If we're looking at the little triangle that forms underneath the blade edge, it's a short triangle. Whereas the one on the Hati, it's a little bit taller. And if we lay these knives side by side, or kind of just hold them up in the light where it's visible, you can see that the angle grind, where the grind of the blade actually starts, is sharper on the F95 versus the Hati. The Hati it's more of a kind of a longer ramp between the blade stock width and the grind itself. So the Hati's thinner behind the edge, which a lot of people are, you know, it's a really big, I'm not gonna say stickler, but it's very important to them to have a thin blade behind the edge. It's good for slicing. And then the other notable difference is up at the spine of the blade. If we hold them side by side, you can see that the Hati, the chamfer, or I wouldn't call it a swedge, I think it's just more of a chamfer. The chamfering right here on the corner of the blade it's more profound than it is with the F95. It's the same size, but just because the angle is larger and there's more chamfering, you can tell. Another thing is, actually this is probably where the weight comes in and why these two aren't similar on why the Hati isn't more noticeably lighter. It's because of this backspacer right here. You can see my F95 has a barrel standoff and that's it, versus the Hati has a full backspacer with the recessed pocket clip, the recessed lanyard hole. So the extra weight is going to be made up for in here. I imagine without this, it would be under 4 ounces. So otherwise, the only other really noticeable difference here is you can see that the F95 has a flipper tab groove, whereas the Hati it's just kind of chamfered a little bit, which I really appreciate, because if we want to bring out another knife really quick, you can see here that the Norseman, not only does the Norseman not have a flipper tab groove, but the edges on the inside of the Norseman are not chamfered, not very well, and so it's a little bit sharp. So that's just a little thing that, you know, since the Hati doesn't have a flipper tab groove, it's nice to see that the corners of the scales are chamfered very nicely, so that when you I don't want to cut myself trying to use two knives at the same time. So when you are deploying the knife, you know, you can sit here and, you know, rub your finger on this all day long and it's not going to irritate it, whereas the Norseman, it kind of tears up your finger a little bit. But this is the goal right here for any flipper knife, I think, is to have the flipper tab cut out. And you'll see most high-end production knives have them, so it's a little bit of a mystery to me why the Norseman is not. But so those are the really kind of standout differences that are worth mentioning here. Weight, price, construction a little bit, just, you know, maybe you like your lanyard hole. Does the lanyard on the F95 is just milled into the show scale versus having a full kind of lanyard carrier. Can't lanyard hole. I'm not really sure how to describe that. But really the only other thing, I guess, aesthetic-wise, is you can see that the Shirogorov Bear logo is kind of lasered onto the blade here versus in the F95 where it's milled into the handle. And I think it's cooler when it's milled into the handle personally. But I imagine it wouldn't show up very well in the carbon fiber. So those are, like I said, those are the really main kind of like specification or stat-wise differences between these two knives. If you're into a little more beefier knife when you're carrying, the F95 is going to be the way to go. It's more expensive, but it's got a little more heft to it, which I personally enjoy. If you are looking for a lighter knife that is going to be, you know, easier to carry a little bit, it's thinner behind the edge, you're going to want to go with the Hati. Not only is it cheaper, so that's going to be a big difference for some people. I love Shirogorov knives. I really do. And so it kind of sucks that these are the only two that I have, honestly. I really want to get a newer F95 so I can see, you know, what the little differences are and if they've got more milling. And since this guy only has single row bearings, I'm interested to see how a multi-row bearing system would really compare after it's broken in. As for the Hati, I had my eye on a lot of the Alitex ones. I think they're really cool, and I handled a bunch of them at Blade Show. But I would also be interested to see just kind of what differences there are between these, and, you know, I just really would love to get my hands on some more Shirogorov knives because they're so nice. Personal opinion, I like the F95 more. Part of that is because it's unique. Like I said, they don't make the carbon fiber inlays anymore. All you're going to see now is micarta, which is honestly awesome. I would totally like having a micarta inlay F95, but just the equivalent of the rare factor of this guy not being made anymore is really cool to me. This knife has been passed along to a number of people. I think I'm the fourth or third owner, so it has really, really worn in just perfectly. I don't think it could be any better. Like this. That's why I if anybody asks me, I tell them to buy a used Shirogorov. Don't buy new. Not only are they kind of annoying to get just because Recon 1 can kind of charge whatever they want for it, but once they're worn in, they're just so nice. Like the Detent is worn in perfectly on this guy, so even though it only has single row bearing system, it's so smooth. And it, you know, I mean, handling the new F95s at Blade Show, they're just as smooth as this, even though they have like 20 more bearings. So this guy really is just worn in the perfect amount. So this is my favorite. If I had to, you know, if I had the opportunity to trade for some fancy knife, I would definitely let this guy go first. But he also has a little bit of a rare factor because of the Van X37 not being used anymore, and also it's a carbon fiber versus the Alitex. But I've seen a handful of these pop up, but just in this configuration too. I think they only made the carbon fiber Hatis in this kind of light blue and black, and that's it. So maybe white. But this guy, as you can tell, the Detent well, the Detent, and since it has multi-row bearing system, the Detent is much lighter. This guy, I can pretty easily get this guy to kind of misfire if I really, like that. Whereas with the F95, if the blade comes out, it's gonna come out all the way. There's no kind of misfire gonna happen with this guy just because the Detent's strong enough. But with this, I bet I could gravity flick this knife even. I'm not gonna try because you won't be able to see it. But I don't care because, as you can tell, it's buttery smooth. And it's not like the Norseman per se, where the Norseman is so smooth that the blade will bounce off the stop pin and come back out, which is cool, I guess, because that's how smooth it is, and that's kind of their shtick. But at the same time, it's kind of annoying because if you're ever using your knife and you close it and it pops out of the, like that. I just got it to do it. See how you heard it click and engage, but it actually popped out. So, I really have to try and do that with this guy, but I couldn't. It would never happen just on its own. So, the D10 is light, yes, but it makes for just a buttery smooth, kind of hydraulic smooth action versus the kind of air, like frictionless action that the Norseman has. So, like I said, they're fantastic knives. Design-wise, I'm not sure which one I like better, honestly. I mean, like I said, the carbon fiber is cool. I do think that there are different F95 variations that I like more than the carbon fiber one. Honestly, the micarta one is really cool, and if I had them side by side, I don't know which one I would like more. Also, I think it's the F95 R18, last year's F95 model, which I guess is the thing they do. They do a new F95 kind of model every year because they did the 19 this year. And the 19 is cool. Honestly, it's very similar to how this inlay is structured, but instead of the inlay, there would just be kind of a pattern milled to the titanium. But I like the 18 better. As for the Hati, I really like the new Alitex ones because they have a lot of colors. I think the red is really pretty, and the violet and the turquoise, really cool. With this, you can see how the lock side has a blue anodization, and I don't think that the new Hatis have anodized lock sides. I think they're just plain tie. So, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of do a comparison between these two guys. If anybody's thinking about getting a Shirogorov, like I said, try and get a new one. Try the Facebook buy, sell, and trade group, or Instagram, Reddit, whatnot, because once they're broken in, they're so much better. And like, you can kind of see how this has a kind of almost a tumbled stonewash finish on the lock side, and that's going to really hide wear. Like if I scratched this thing to hell, you wouldn't be able to tell really. And unlike the F95, where it still has kind of a light wash finish, but you can see here on the clip, you can see those marks. If this clip was scratched up, you wouldn't be able to tell just because it's already kind of been tumbled. It got that tumbled look. So, try and get a used one if you're interested. I really want to get my hands on an F3, either in the micarta or the carbon fiber, and I also need to get a 111. So once I get all those, then I'll have the four horsemen of the Shirogorov apocalypse. So I had Neon, as you guys might have seen on my channel. Wasn't a huge fan. I've heard that the Neon Zero is quite the knife, but I think it's $720 retail, so I'm not interested in that. It's also small. It's their EDC friendly knife, which for a lot of people is smaller. For me, I like bigger knives for EDC. So yeah, I could not be happier with these knives. I really am, and like I said, that's kind of what is driving me to get more. I just want more of them because they're so nice, and I can't wait till I can do more comparison videos, or whether it's a Hati versus the new Hati, F95 versus the new F95, or cross comparisons between the models like this one where I'm doing the F95 Hati. I might be doing an F3 and the F95, and you know, all that stuff. I could do a million videos just on these knives and sit here and talk about them, but they're great. And I would, if you're into the upper tier of collecting at this point, I would totally recommend trying to get one or two. Trading is a great way to do that. Trading plus cash is how I got this guy. So yeah, this has been my first comparison video between the Shirogorov F95 and the Shirogorov Hati.